Hey, this is Kate from Prenursing Smarter. Thanks so much for joining me here today. This is a requested video to do some T7 science flashcards for chemistry and biology. So I'm in my Prenursing Smarter TEAS Prep program right now. This has flashcards for absolutely every section of the TEAS, but I will link to some flashcards. And now let's jump into the flashcards. Let's start with some biology flashcards that will cover cell biology. There is some overlap of cell biology with anatomy and physiology and biology, so it's a great subject to know for the TEAS science section. Organelle. An organelle is a specialized structure that performs important cellular functions within a eukaryotic cell. A eukaryotic cell is a cell that has a nucleus. Mitochondria. Organelle that's the site of ATP or energy production. You might know that mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. It does aerobic respiration, which means it uses oxygen. And it's found in almost all cells, but this is a particular point for the TEAS. It's concentrated in muscle cells. Some TEAS science questions, particularly for anatomy and physiology, will ask you about organelle concentration in different tissues cells. The muscle cells have more mitochondria than the typical body cell. Golgi apparatus. This is an organelle that modifies, sorts, and packages proteins from the endoplasmic reticulum. What's the endoplasmic reticulum? It's a system of membranes found in the cytoplasm, so outside the nucleus of a eukaryotic cell. It assists in the production, processing, and transport of protein and in production of lipids. The cytoplasm. The cytoplasm is the jelly-like portion of the cell outside the nucleus, and it contains all the organelles. The nucleus, we've already talked about this one quite a bit. It's the control center of the cell. Importantly, it contains all the cell's chromosomes and genetic information, so the chromosomes, that bounds and bounds of DNA. And because it's so important, it's surrounded by a double-layered membrane called the nuclear envelope. So the nucleus is almost like a little cell within a cell. Extra important, it contains all the genetic information the cell would ever need, but extra protected with a double-layer membrane. The nuclear envelope is a lipid bilayer that surrounds the nucleus, and it's also called the nuclear membrane. Nuclear pores are openings in the nuclear envelope that allow the passage of materials between the nucleus and the cytoplasm. So this idea that all the important genetic information is inside the nucleus of the cell, it needs to send messages out to the endoplasmic reticulum to make proteins, to help make all those cell building blocks. So nuclear pores are ways that those messages can get out of the nucleus and into the cytoplasm. The plasma membrane is selectively permeable, so thinking of that idea, allowing some things to go in and out. It's a selectively permeable phospholipid bilayer and forms the boundaries of cells. So we have a few more terms here, but let's make this a chemistry video as well and start going over some acids and bases flashcards. You'll have several scored chemistry questions on the TEAS. Common topics that you might see would be acids and bases, states of matter and phase changes, water in solution, periodic table of elements, and common chemical reactions. So an acid is a compound that forms hydrogen ions, so H plus, in solution. It has a pH below 7, and it donates electrons. So this H plus means it gets rid of electrons, it donates them, so that ions are positive. And do you remember what a positive ion is called? A cation. A base is a compound that forms hydroxide ions, OH negative, like that, in solution, and it has a pH above 7. It receives electrons, so it has a negative charge because electrons are negative, so anything that has more electrons carries a negative charge. Do you remember what a negatively charged ion is called? An anion. H plus here, this is hydrogen ion. It's made by acids in solution, it's reactive, and it's a cation. These hydroxide anion made by bases in solution. Aqueous solution is a solution with water, aqua, aqueous. It's a solution with water as a solvent. So water dissolves the chemicals in a solution. Buffer are chemicals that neutralize acids or bases in a solution. and it can bond to the extra positive or negative ion. A buffer solution is an aqueous solution with an equilibrium reaction between weak acid and conjugate bases. It keeps the pH in a narrow range, and buffer solutions have a weak acid and conjugate base. So we know that acids have a pH below 7, bases have a pH above 7, and 7 is a neutral pH. So this buffer solution helps keep an equilibrium reaction between those acids and bases to kind of control that pH. So we have some more here. Let's do some of these practice questions. What is the pH of blood? Blood is slightly basic. It has a pH between 7.35 and 7.45, so it's just a little bit above 7, so it's slightly basic. The lower the pH, the blank the acid. The lower the pH, the stronger the acid. The smaller a number gets away from 7, so 1, for example, that would be a very strong acid. The higher the pH, the blank the base. The higher the pH, the stronger the base. Those numbers get away from 7 higher, they are stronger bases. What do strong acids and bases do in aqueous solution? They fully dissociate or break up. For example, hydrochloric acid becomes all hydrogen, all chlorine atoms. What are 3 examples of acids in the environment as emphasized by the TEAS? Vinegar, acid rain, and lemon juice. Acids in the body, as emphasized by the TEAS, hydrochloric acid or stomach acid, urine, carbonic acid, which is formed from carbon dioxide and water in cellular respiration. 6 traits of acids. Acids have a pH below 7. Acids taste sour. Acids feel like burning on the skin. Acids can degrade metals. Acids create hydrogen ions in solution. And acids turn blue litmus paper red. Here's a way to remember the traits of bases. How can you remember base trait? Using the letter B. Bases taste bitter, turn litmus paper blue, and degrade proteins and feel soapy just like bleach. Bases, bitter, blue, bleach. I'll start with. When acids and bases react, what is the pH of the resulting solution? 7 or neutral. In a reaction, acids and bases create water and a blank. Salt. Acids and bases create water and salt. It's not always NaCl, of course, is what we think of, but salts are ionic bonds between metals, which are cations, positively charged, and nonmetals, which are negatively charged. 5 examples of bases in everyday environments: soap, drain cleaner, salt water, baking soda, and ammonia. Bases in the body: blood, bile, and pancreatic juices. We have the word duodenum here. That is the first part of the small intestine. When chyme, or partially digested food, leaves the stomach, it's acidic from all that acid. Bile and pancreatic juices help neutralize that acidic chyme after it's leaving the stomach environment, because the stomach can handle the acid, but the rest of the digestive system prefers not to. And then we have bicarbonate and phosphate. Let's see here. Chemistry, states of matter, and physical changes. So I have a note here for you. If you're feeling overwhelmed, focus on the formula for density, properties of solid, liquids, and gases, and then being able to define melting, boiling, evaporation, and sublimation. Of course, with the TEAS, there's always a ton of stuff you might be tested on, and then there's things that you're more likely to see. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, I try to help you identify what you're most likely to see, what gives you a good bang for your study buck, and other things that are great to know. So the 3 states of matter are solid, liquid, and gas. A solid has a fixed shape and volume, under high pressure, low temperature, and has high atomic attraction. Classic example, solid water is an ice cube. It has a fixed shape and volume, and it's low temperature because it's cold when you touch it. Liquids have a fixed volume but a changing shape, meaning it takes the shape of a container. Under high pressure, it's at a higher temperature and it has a weaker physical bonding than solids. So liquid water, for example, will take the shape whatever container you pour it into. A gas has a changing volume and shape, low pressure, higher temperature, and weaker atomic attraction. Gas, water, water vapor, you're boiling some water for pasta, and that steam, it's at a higher temperature than the water started, and it's changing volume and shape, it's getting on your glasses, it's going around the kitchen. Kinetic molecular theory means molecules are in constant motion and change molecular motion based on changes in temperature. So we see that states of water, for example, solid, liquid, and gas, all change based on the temperature that those oxygen and hydrogen molecules are being exposed to. Molecular motion is motion of atoms in an object. It's affected by temperature. Gases have the most amount of molecular motion. Solids have the least amount of molecular motion. And molecular motion increases as heat is added. So in this idea of adding or removing heat is important for those phase changes. A crystalline solid is a solid made of crystals with particles arranged in a regular repeating pattern. A phase change is a change from one state, solid or liquid or gas, to another without a change in chemical composition, and it involves adding or removing. So water can change from a solid, liquid, or gas, steam, would you drink, ice cube, and it's still water. It has the same chemical composition. It's changing its state or form based on if you're adding or removing heat. An exothermic reaction is a reaction that releases energy in the form of heat. XO, heat is exiting, versus an endothermic reaction that absorbs energy in the form of heat. Endo, in, the heat is going in. Two external factors that affect matter state, we've already talked about these a little bit, temperature and pressure. So temperature, adding or removing heat, pressure, adding or removing pressure. We can see here that solids, high pressure, liquid, high pressure, gas, low pressure. Here's some phase changes for you. Vaporization is when a liquid goes to a gas. It's a phase change, and you're adding heat. So it's an endothermic reaction. Endo, in, adding heat, and it's a spontaneous phase change. Evaporation, liquid goes to a gas. It's a phase transition, adding heat. It happens at the boiling point, and it depends on atmospheric pressure. Condensation is when gas goes to a liquid. It's a phase change, and it's removing heat, so it's an exothermic reaction. Heat is exiting. Freezing, it's when a liquid goes to a solid. It's a phase change, and it's removing heat, exothermic reaction. So you might think if you're freezing water from your tap or your sink turns into a solid ice, and you put it in the freezer, so you cool it down and you remove heat from it. Heat exits. That's an exothermic reaction. Sublimation is when solid goes to a gas. It skips over the liquid phase. It's a phase change and it's adding heat. It's an endothermic reaction. If you go from solid and gas, you might imagine that's quite a bit of energy to have it jump over the liquid phase. Back up here when we talked about what to know. Properties of solids, liquids, and gases. We've talked about that. We've talked about some of these phase changes. Now let's go do the formula for density. Here, density is mass divided by volume. You know this formula for the TEAS. It's not too bad. You might have to calculate density for a question. Mass divided by volume. Okay, and so then we have some more. Here, I said melting point is also really important. Melting point is the temperature when a solid becomes a liquid. So if you're melting butter, for example, you take a cold, solid stick of butter out of your refrigerator, you put it in a pan and turn on the heat. So you're adding heat. The solid butter becomes a liquid butter, and you can do delicious things. We talked a little bit about the boiling point. It's the temperature when liquid changes to a gas or vapor. Boiling point of water at sea level is 100 degrees centigrade or 212 degrees Fahrenheit. It depends on pressure. Triple point is a temperature and pressure conditions where solid, liquid, and gas phases of a substance coexist at equilibrium. So triple is 3, and we have 3 states, solid, liquid, and gas. All right, that covers quite a bit of material. I hope this helps you. I have tons of chemistry and biology lessons here. If you need help with periodic table of elements, balancing equations, macromolecules, microbiology, DNA and proteins, we cover it all. We didn't cover the periodic table of elements today in this video, but I do have a pretty robust video here for you. And then we should have quiz questions here as well in the full program. Let me know what videos you want to see next and how I can help you. Keep up the great work with your TEAS prep, and I'll catch up with you in the next video. Take care.